Welcome to the Sharp Way Show. I'm so happy to have you with me. A little bit past 7 p.m. on the East Coast. And I know some of you are saying, Larry, where have you been? I know I've been out, but I was sick. I had the, whatever is the thing that's going around thing that we all have with that crazy cough. I had that thing, so I couldn't be here. So I lost 7 shows or something. But I have returned. You may all rejoice. I am now here. It is okay. And I have an interesting show today. A thing that is very close to me. Those of you who know my story know that I've had to go on I've been on a very special keto lifestyle for about 13 years. And I talk often about health, freedom, and things like that. And I was very lucky to find someone who actually was at Freedom Fest with me earlier this year in summer. She was actually on a panel with the one and only Spike Cohen. Yes, the man, the myth, the legend. She was next to him. And as always, he was funny, but she was better because, anyway, I'm teasing you, Spike. I love you, Spike. If you're listening, I love you. I'm just teasing you. But yes, she has been through a journey herself and is very open about it. She has a YouTube page and a website, and she talks about this, and she is a really good resource for people who are considering the carnivore lifestyle. She is an influencer, and her name is the one and only Laura Spath. How are you?
Hi, Larry. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely happy to have you here. And for those of you who want to see what she's doing, you can head up to her YouTube page if you want. The link is right there if you want to, but it is kind of simple. It's Laura Spath on YouTube. So you can check her out and what she's doing there. So I guess what I want to chat with you about, number one piece is what people may or may not know. At one point, you lost 120 pounds in a year. Is that about right?
Yeah, absolutely. 120 in about 10 months. So we'll call it a year just for, a little buffer on each side, but yeah.
That's still impressive. It's fine, right? It's fine. Still impressive. And you've been able to keep it off.
And you know what? That's I think the more impressive part, because
Correct.
I have lost weight many, many, many times in my life, but I always gained it back plus some. So the fact that it's now been 5 years and I've kept it off, to me, that's the hard part, and has been the real testament to the journey that I've been on.
5 years is amazing, because what I hear about many people who don't like any of the, I'm going to categorize them into the low carb type diets, right? Like carnivore, keto, paleo, whatever you want to call it in that world. What I hear from people constantly is, Larry, you can't do those because they're not sustainable. I hear that all the time.
Right.
Yet I've been on it for 13 years, you for 5. Are we the oddballs? Are they right on this?
I think that there's a part of people that misses those old foods. And so from a health perspective, there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. You don't need there's no essential donuts that you need to have in your diet in order to be healthy. And so
you just made me angry now. Donuts aren't essential? Wait a minute. Okay, I'm kidding.
Right. Yes. I know those dozens of Krispy Kremes I ate in my life previously were clearly not doing any good for my health. So right. I'm not missing out on any essential carbohydrates at this point. From a health perspective, there's nothing that prevents you from doing low carb, keto, carnivore as I do for forever. You're not missing out on anything. I think the harder part for people is the mental aspect and and the emotional connection that they have to food. And they just have a hard time sticking with it. I totally understand that aspect.
And this is why I bring this up often. People want to say, Larry, why do you bring this stuff up sometimes? Because what I do for my daily life, right, is I'm a consultant, coach, trainer. And a lot of what I do is I train people to break habits, right? It's a common thing, right? Usually in leadership mode, right? I tend to be a corporate trainer with leaders, executives. That's my day-to-day job. And while diet and exercise aren't the same, they are. In one way is that they're habits, right? So you've got to begin to break habits, right? When I get mad, I yell at people. That's not because I'm a broken person. It's because that's what I know.
Right.
So I yell. And as a boss, that's usually a bad idea, right? So I'm going to break that habit. When I'm upset, I can't yell at people. I'm going to have terrible turnover. People are going to be upset at me. No one's going to tell me the truth, right? So I got to break that habit. This is kind of what you're talking about too, isn't it?
Yeah, it's easy to stick to any type of extreme diet or protocol when everything's going well in your life. When
Right.
you can focus on the gym and you don't have any stress and you're not dealing with any emotional trauma or you're not dealing with any problems in your life, we're all pretty good at sticking to a diet for 30 days or so. But then inevitably, we live in the real world and financial troubles happen, marital troubles happen, life happens, your job is stressful, your kids are crazy, and something happens that triggers you. And we have been ingrained in our society to use food as an emotional tool for that. Food is pleasure, food is comfort,
Yes.
food makes me feel better. It's a literal endorphin high. It's a drug that we're using to make us feel better in that moment. And it's an entirely different thing to like eat low carb and lose weight, to learn how to deal with those emotions in a way that's not using food for.
Well, you brought you I talk about this, you talk about this, but a lot of people think we're crazy when we talk about the idea of, food, particularly carbs, can be an addiction, right? I know we don't need food, of course, but carbs can be an addiction. It can be a food addiction. And when I was at my worst, I wasn't drinking, I wasn't doing drugs. I mean, pizza and soda was my cocaine. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it worked. It made me feel good. Pizza, when you have pizza and soda, initially it does feel good. It did work, right? Sadly, of course, it's like any other drug. It goes away and you need more of it. But
Right.
it absolutely did work. But in today's world, I don't know if you see it. I see it because people know what I do, so they often send this to me. There is a movement now that says that this is not real, that food addiction is not real, that it's just made up, that your weight is just natural. There's right. It's just you're big because you're big. That's it. There's nothing you can do about it. I feel that movement's coming out. And I'm saying to myself, is that a real? I'm like, what is that? Why do people think? I remember someone actually said this, which drove me crazy. They said fat phobia is rooted in racism. And I was like, what? Like,
Right.
what? But that's a movement now. How do you handle that? I mean, that you've got to see in that, aren't you?
Yeah, I think the root of it too is, and why it's so socially acceptable and pushed is, I'm sure like the libertarians, in this channel and this space will accept a lot more than people maybe in the pure carnivore world. And that's that obesity is profitable. It's profitable for the food industry to buy those foods. They are designed to be highly addictive. So the more you eat, the more profit they are making. It's also profitable for the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry because the more overweight you are, the sicker you are. And there is no such thing as healthy at every size. You can be not sick yet, but think about every 90-year-old that you've ever known to be alive at 90. They were not obese. There is no such thing as an obese 90-year-old because you cannot live that long when your body is that way. I was almost 300 pounds. I was not healthy just because I wasn't on full-blown diabetic, right? Crazy enough, I was 0.1 away from being considered a full-blown diabetic, and my doctor never told me. I was officially pre-diabetic, and I was one large pizza away from being a full-blown diabetic.
Wow.
And the doctor would give me my blood work back and say, "You're totally healthy, you're great," even though I was almost 300 pounds. Right? They were waiting for the day that I crossed over that line, and they could hand me a prescription to say, "You're diabetic, here's a prescription."
It's funny you say that, right? When I was first on keto, my doctors have been trying to get me on statins for years. And I remember, I tell the story often. You might've heard, I told it at the other podcast I was on. I go to the doctor every 4 years when I run for office so that I have medical records, right? That's why, otherwise I wouldn't go. I don't like doctors who never go, but I have to have medical records to run. So I go get my physical, whatever. And every time I try to put me on statin, and I always say no, and they go, "But you're getting ready to have a heart attack." They told me that 14 years ago, and it still hasn't happened, right? So then when I went there to the front, I have no prescriptions. So the receptionist said, "Mr. Sharp, you've got to put your prescriptions." I said, "I don't have any." They're like,
"Yeah,
you're in your 50s. You're supposed to have some, right? That's kind of the rules." So then the nurse who takes me in, he's like, "Well, you forgot your prescriptions." I'm like, no, I don't have any. The doctor comes in and she's like, "Where's your prescriptions?" I don't have any. So like they couldn't, none of them, they all thought I made a mistake. Because to your point, that's how they get paid.
Absolutely. And the same thing with the food industry. They have entire departments of people who are there to design to make the foods more addicting and more palatable, and combining all of the chemicals and sugars and fats and things so that we just cannot be satiated.
Yes.
I think that's what's helpful for people when you are struggling with something like food addiction, or you don't really know what that is. Think about it as that sugar addiction, that processed food addiction, the carb addiction. Like, I was never at a point in my life where I was addicted to broccoli or addicted now to ground beef in the same way that I was addicted to pizza and ice cream and donuts. And I think that it's hard. It is, you mentioned it, like, we can't be, how do I be addicted to food? I still have to eat. If you're an alcoholic, you can quit drinking alcohol. But I can abstain completely from carbs and sugar and processed foods. And those are the foods that I was addicted to. It's not a steak and a perfectly grilled pork chop, right? Those are not things that cause me to binge.
Now you're making me hungry.
Reach for them. I know. I don't reach for them when I'm emotional or when I'm stressed.
Let me grab a couple comments if I could.
Yeah.
So, Justice Makes Capitalism Possible says, yes, it's the optimal diet for all humans. Stop poisoning yourself with plants. I feel like, I mean, I get what Justice is talking about, but I feel like saying plants are poison, I feel like that turns people away, right? I mean, one of the things that's funny is, unless I'm doing a show like this, I don't talk about my diet. Right. Like, this is not the keto show, right? I mean, I unless I'm talking about my diet, I don't bring it up, right? Yeah. People, even when I'm out eating, I don't tell people that I'm keto. I just eat what I eat, right? Some people notice here or there and ask a question. I don't talk about it. I'm not trying to get people to change. If that makes any sense. Yeah. I'm just trying, because I don't know if keto is right for everybody, right? I don't know that. I know it's right for me, that I'm sure of. But I'm not sure if it's right for everybody. So I do eat plants. So with that in mind, let me ask you two things. One, do you see plants as bad? That's one. And then two, separate question, what do you see as a difference between keto and carnivore? So first up, are plants bad? I
think plants' defense mechanism, if someone was trying to eat me, I would run away. Yep. If someone is trying to eat a deer or an animal, they try to run away. That is their defense mechanism. Plants don't have that ability. And so think about all of the hundreds of millions of different types of species of plants on Earth. How many of them are actually edible? Very few, very small percentage. And honestly, most of them have been developed by man over time, right? Broccoli is not something, asparagus, our ancestors were not eating those hundreds and thousands of years ago. So there are these defense mechanisms in plants that can cause people harm if they are unwell, and if you have autoimmune conditions, if you have a lot of health issues, those plants can cause you negative reactions because of some of the toxins that are in them. Now, for most healthy people, it's a hormetic effect where you get a little bit of toxins and it makes you healthier, and it's not a bad thing. But I do think that, and there's a difference in this carnivore community, there's a lot of people that are saying every plant is trying to kill you. And I don't know if that gentleman was joking or
that may be what they're talking about, right?
Yes. Yeah, but there's a lot of people that say that very serious.
Isn't that literally, aren't some plants, their goal is to be eaten so you can poop out the seed?
Fruit, right? That's a fruit. Fruits are designed to do that. Something else that's like which is why there's another whole group of carnivores who are like meat and fruit. And I think if you are a healthy person, if you're going to eat plants in general, fruits are healthier from an antitoxin perspective. But then you have somebody like me.
Officially, though, tomatoes and peppers, aren't they officially fruit?
Correct, which is why they have those seeds and they're kind of designed to be that way. Yeah.
Because I only eat tomatoes and peppers.
There you go. Good. and I think for a lot of people, those things can be fine. The benefits that people find for carnivore are really twofold. And one of them is from a very serious—
Hold on, before you go there, in your mind, tell me, or tell the audience, what's the difference between keto and carnivore? Some people can't tell the difference.
So keto would be typically as described as anything under 20 grams of carbs per day. It's, a lot of people maybe do a little more like 50, but it's traditionally higher fat, moderate protein, and very little carbs, 20 or less. So you could get those 20 carbs from sometimes vegetables, some small amounts of fruit. You're going to eat meat. A lot of people who are on keto might do keto treats or artificially sweetened things.
That's me.
Yeah, no problems with all of that. I have many friends and family who eat that way. Not a problem. With carnivore, it's literally cutting out anything that's not meat and eggs. There's a, very, depending on how strict you are, there's people who literally just eat beef, salt, and water. And they're doing those types. Yeah. They're doing those protocols to heal serious autoimmune conditions and major health issues that are being flared up and triggered sometimes by additional plants. I think your average everyday carnivore like myself eats any kind of meat. If it had a face, I'll eat it, is usually what I say. Eggs.
The exact opposite of the vegans.
Okay. Right. I tell my coworkers, like, if a vegan would eat it, I'm not going to eat it. And if a vegan won't eat it, then put it on my plate. Right.
Got it.
So meat, eggs, cheese, but I am not somebody who consumes vegetables on a daily basis, really at all in the last 6 years. Mainly for me personally, they cause me a lot of digestive issues and inflammation.
Okay.
Those are all things that I used to be keto. I started on this way of eating 6 years ago, started keto and then stalled a little bit in weight loss, but then kind of accidentally went carnivore by cutting out my salads and vegetables for about a week, and realized that when I did that, all of my digestive issues went away. Chronic stuff that I'd been dealing with for many years. A lot of my joint issues and back pain went away. A lot of my acne and skin breakouts went away when I cut out the nuts. Those are all things that some plants can cause you inflammation. And
it's funny when you say that. My daughter, who now is 19, she just kind of went on it last year, very recently. When she came back from college, she moved in with me, and she's like, "Hey, I want to do keto like you, Dad." I said, "Okay, let's do it." Yeah. Lost weight, better health, happier, more energy, no more brain fog. She's doing better in college. It was like magic. I was like, wow. And what's funny is, this, if you don't kind of believe it and then all of a sudden believe it, you become like evangelical. Right. And she is like evangelical now. It's crazy. You're everything you're saying, totally correct. Yeah. Yes.
And you don't realize how good you feel. So many people chalk things up to I'm getting older. This is part of aging. I'm in my 40s, I'm in my 30s, or whatever that is. It doesn't have to be that way.
I'm in my 50s.
Right. Right. You kind of forget how good you're supposed to feel until you cut out all of the foods that are making you feel terrible. I used to wake up with a headache every single day of my life, and I just thought that was normal. And I had no idea that you're not supposed to feel that way, but it's food related.
Absolutely. Let me grab some more comments. I got a bunch of people commenting stuff you talked about. I'm gonna grab a couple. No soundbites allowed. How are you? His name is Michael Voss, the guy who's actually behind that. He says, humans are not herbivores and plants are hard to digest. Thus, vegetarians have so many issues. I think a lot of people in America now think the opposite. They have blamed meat for all the problems and not the vegetables. You two agree, obviously, and are going the opposite way.
Yeah, I used to have, not to be graphic, but massive issues with constipation and digestive issues. And all what I was ever recommended by doctors and specialists for years and years was more fiber, more fiber, more fiber. But essentially what fiber is something your body cannot absorb. And it's literally giving you something to push out of your system because your body cannot utilize it for nutrient value. Meat is primarily water, and it also has all of these nutrients that are bioavailable for you. So when I eat a steak, my body is absorbing all of these nutrients readily. It's designed to absorb all of the nutrients from meat. And then what's left over is water waste. And so most people who go carnivore are experiencing the opposite problem that I was experiencing, right? You think that this is a silly thing, but I get asked every day, how do you poop? And everybody who goes carnivore has the opposite problem of what you'd expect, is that your body has to learn how to not have all of this extra waste in it from these vegetables that you can't absorb.
Funny you say that. People always tease me. My elimination is just fine, thank you.
Yes.
And I've been doing this for 13 years. I have no issues whatsoever. I'm fine in every way. So let me talk to my audience for a second. Guys, if you're liking what you're saying, seeing what you're hearing, do me a favor, click the like button. It does matter. Click that like button right now. It's how I get past all the algorithms. If you're watching this on Twitter, please retweet this. It does matter. Every little bit counts. If you can retweet, please do so. If you want to super chat me, you can support the show directly with a super chat if you're watching me on Larry Sharpe YouTube. But no matter what, Laura has been so good to us. Please follow her on YouTube. Subscribe to her channel. Watch her stuff. Check her out on YouTube. All of her other things. She has lots of them. She's got Instagram and all the things. It's if you go to either YouTube or Facebook, you will see all of her link trees all right there. Check out what she's doing. It really does matter. Let me grab a couple of comments if I can. A bunch more comments are popping in, and I want to grab some of these if I can. Let's see here. Andrea says, I'm on keto as well, lost 115 pounds.
Wow. That's awesome. Congratulations, Andrea.
I thought I was good. You guys made me look bad. I lost like 40 pounds. And you guys are like, chump. So you guys are great. I love this. This is amazing. So, all right. Let's see here. The Scientific Libertarian says, this isn't that raw meat nonsense, is it? Salmonella and Listeria don't care how many push-ups you did. Is this a raw meat thing? Is that part of keto? Is raw meat like just so you know, myself, I like all of my meat and eggs cooked very lightly. I have eggs, my breakfast every day, and it has been for literally years, is bacon and eggs. The same thing every day in the morning. And I very lightly cooked eggs, very lightly cooked bacon. Every day is what I have. And usually I eat vegetables, so I have some form of salad and meat for dinner. I usually eat twice a day. That's all I usually eat. And I probably drink too much coffee. That's probably a bad thing. I probably shouldn't do that.
Right.
But that's where I am. I don't eat raw meat, but my mom did. I don't. Is this a raw meat thing at all?
I do not eat raw meat. That would not sound very appealing to me. And that's kind of why I love carnivore so much, is because the food is so good. But with every community of people who are eating a certain way or living a certain lifestyle, there's always the extremes. And so there are people in carnivore who do raw meat. I think the main issue from a bacterial perspective, as that person mentioned, is like, where's your meat coming from? Is it sourced? I think all of those things. Has it been blade tenderized? Things that could introduce bacteria to your meat, you would need to be careful of. I have no interest in eating raw meat or raw eggs and those types of things. I like them a good rare, but that's where I'm at. I think though there's probably a YouTube video for people out there talking about the benefits of raw meat over cooked meat, but like I have no, if I had to eat raw meat full time, I'd go back to eating pizza and just decide I would be fat and miserable. So there's a certain breaking point for me where obviously health is the goal, but from someone who came from such a food addict background, I do need things to taste good and I need to enjoy them, which is why eating a steak is so enjoyable for me.
Got it. That makes total sense. I like that. Let me grab a couple more comments if I can here. Again, a lot of people are commenting. I'm going to grab some cool ones. I do like that meat one. That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Mike again goes on to say he's been doing it since he was 16. In 1884, I think he means 1984. I don't think he's like 150. So I think he means 19, but that's fine. Probably see, he typed in 1984 and the book came. So he was like, I hate that book. Yeah. So that was mental. That's what it was. Love it. Yes, I just thought that was kind of funny. But Joe brings up something that you also bring up too. Fasting. Joe says he does 18-6 fasting. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that's intermittent fasting, different type of fasting, one type of fasting. And what that means is you don't eat for 18 hours and all your calories are taken in within 6 hours. And the goal is to get you into autophagy, which allows you to kind of rebuild. But you've gone even further. You've talked about like 48-hour fasting. Yeah. So let me ask, what are your opinion on both of those? What's your opinion on intermittent and what's your opinion on the longer 2-day fastings?
I think they both can be very beneficial, especially in reversing obesity, insulin resistance, reversing diabetes, and just losing weight in general. And they have a tremendous healing benefits. Like autophagy is a great concept of your body kind of eating out all of those bad toxic cells in your body and then creating new ones. So fasting is tremendous. But like I said, with the raw meat stuff, there are people who take it too far. And I think that there are people who are trying to see who can get the longest fast. They're doing these, if a lot of women in this community do these rolling 48-hour fast, which is where they fast for 48 hours. They eat a tremendous amount. They go 48 hours, they eat, they do 48, like over and over and over again.
Wow.
And what happens over time is like, if you fast one time when you've been eating an adequate amount, your body's like trucking along, you're getting adequate nutrients and calories, and you fast for a day, great, no big deal. My metabolism's not going to slow down. My body's not going to shut down because I'm getting adequate calories. Like, whoop, we just lost a little weight, no problem. But when you are fasting in these extreme ways every day, or if you are fasting to the point that your body is not being adequately getting enough nutrients during the day, then over time, your metabolism is going to slow down because you're under eating chronically. So I'm a huge fan of fasting. I am not a fan of under eating consistently. And so like my husband eats 1 meal a day. He does a 24-hour fast every day. He sits down to 2 pounds of steak.
OMAD,
a big old cutting board. Yeah. And eats 1 meal, loves it. I would love to do that, but I can't eat enough in one sitting to be able to give myself all of the protein and calories that I would need to have proper healthy muscles and hair and hormones. So I have to break things up a little bit. So I think fasting is amazing. You just have to make sure that in your meal window, you're actually eating enough to continue to have a healthy functioning body.
Let me grab a couple more comments. Andrea goes on to say 2.5 years and going very sustainable for me as well. Beef does a body good and keeps you full and glucose stable. So you have some fans here for sure.
Yes, absolutely. Fantastic, Andrea.
Joel says the climate crisis mob want to end meat farming. Let me walk down that road if I could for a second. I'm sure people are either not happy with your channel or giving you, bad comments or something. Yeah. I get it often that being keto or being carnivore or paleo or any of these is selfish. It's terrible for the planet. Right. You're killing people, whatever. It's terrible. You're not an environmentalist, so and so on and so forth. And I feel like, particularly in the younger groups, people who are, say, under 25, my daughter feels it too. Like her friends think she's weird for doing this and bad. Like you're a bad person. Why would you want to eat cows? You're a bad person. They're destroying the planet. How do you handle that? Or do you?
Selfishly, I will say that my life is more important than an animal's life, and the life of my children is more important. But to think that your salad doesn't involve animal death is just completely delusional. More animals die per year trying to harvest your avocados and more farmland and the environment and growing your plant-based meats than the one cow that I personally consume per year that's raised, and had a wonderfully healthy, happy life as a cow, who's designed to be harvested for my family to eat. So I think that the sometimes naivete of plant-based and vegetarians and vegans thinking that their vegetables don't contain meat death due to cropping and harvesting, or it's somehow that's not negatively impacting the environment, is a little misguided.
Okay. I like that. I've always thought to myself, I'm not advocating for anyone to do anything, do what you feel is right. That's kind of what I've been. So
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. Peter thinks that we're crazy. He says it works real good until you land in the ICU with clogged arteries. So what I would say is I think there is literally no evidence of that whatsoever. I've never seen anyone in the ICU with clogged arteries who is underweight, who isn't overweight, right? Or something like that, right? I don't see it. I think that everyone that I know, all of them, none of them are on keto. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just my personal. Do you have any data on this?
There just is a lack of studies in general for people who eat keto and carnivore and this type of meat long-term. And there are essentially no studies for people who eat meat only without all of the other things. All of the studies that talk about meat causing cancer and heart disease, they're from people who eat meat, but it's the burger and the bun and the fries and the milkshake. And so it's the combination of all of those two things. Like my body runs on fat for fuel. And so there's a lot of fat moving around in my arteries, but it's not getting clogged because it's being utilized in a healthy way for fuel. And everybody I know who has been carnivore long-term has calcium artery scans. They have, tons of not only we're not talking cholesterol numbers, because I think that's also a really big myth and misunderstood. And you and I definitely agree on all of that. But I think that when you're looking at the particle size of your LDL and you're looking at the actual density of your arteries, when you're eating this way, there is no blockage. There is no issues when you're not consuming carbs. Because when you're consuming carbs, just as a side note, your carbs is an easier source for your body to burn as an energy source. And so if you're eating carbs and meat and fat, it's going to store the fat and burn the carbs. But when you stop eating carbs, it's going to take all of that fat that you're eating and that's stored on your body from all of those donuts that we talked about that I've eaten, and it's going to burn that for my energy because it's not giving carbs. So you can't, high fat, high carb diet is the quickest way to a heart attack. You got to pick one fuel source. And like you mentioned, figure out which one you can stick to and works best for you. I think from a nutritional standpoint, you need meat. And so I choose the carnivore side of it.
Excuse me. But the point I want to bring up though also is, well, Joe brings up, he says sugar is very addictive, which is absolutely very true. But the piece I do want to bring up is Shelly says, I was pretty much vegetarian when I had my heart attacks.
Yeah. I hear that so much. It's so unfortunate.
Yes. All the time I do hear that. But you brought up your kids and you brought up your husband. This has got to be challenging for somebody in a family. And I'll tell you my story. No one else in my family was keto. Yeah. Now my oldest daughter is. My youngest one isn't. My wife isn't. Right. So what does that mean? I eat my own stuff a lot. I just eat what I eat and they eat what they eat. Right. So that's how we dealt with it. How does someone deal with it in their family? Both sides, right? If you decide your kids and your spouse is going to go on the same diet as you, how does that work? Or what if the kids do or don't? Or should they? Talk about that if you don't mind.
Yeah, thankfully, my husband is on board. He also lost over 100 pounds. He is 10 years older than me, so he's almost 50.
Guys are making me look bad.
Yeah, he completely reversed his type 2 diabetes. Actually, what triggered all of this is he almost died due to complications from his diabetes. And it kind of is what led us down this. We had to cut out the sugar and the carbs, and we found carnivore through that. So it is helpful that he's, in this with me. And we've really gone back and forth about what to do with our kids. We had very young children at the time they're now 7 and 9. So do we make them go strict carnivore?
Oh my God, he must have been worried he's going to leave his kids behind.
Yeah, he was in the hospital for months in a coma when I had a 9-month-old and a 2-year-old, and we thought we were going to lose him. It was a really scary time for us. And, there's this question now. People ask all the time, like, what do your kids eat? And a lot of what we focus on with them is low sugar, cutting out seed oils, grains. If they want to eat a vegetable, my daughter's 9, she loves a salad, like go for it. I'm not worried that those plants are killing her and she enjoys it and it's fine. My son doesn't like vegetables. He's 7, as most kids don't like vegetables because they mostly taste terrible because they're not designed to be eaten. Okay. But I'm not concerned that he's lacking anything nutritionally because he's not eating vegetables, because the nutrients that he needs, he's getting from meat. And so honestly, I'm just trying to prevent them from dealing with the same addictiveness with food that I did. They eat 3 meals a day, but they don't eat snacks all day. There is 0 kids. I'm sorry. I don't care how much you're growing and what you think. No kids need snacks all day long. And if you're telling, so many parents are saying, I can't get my kids to eat meat. Like, did they eat goldfish at 2 p.m? They're not going to want to eat a steak at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock because they're running on carbs. And so we really focus on 3 meals a day, meat. They eat some fruit and other things, but I would love for them to grow up and just understand moderation in a way that I don't. And so I'm hoping to, curate a healthier relationship with food than I have, but nutritionally, so what you're actually they eat a lot of meat.
Teaching your kids is you're saying, here's what mommy and daddy do.
Yeah.
Have some moderation. Yeah. I'm going to make sure that you're getting your food that's good for you, and good luck. Hopefully things go well.
Yeah, we don't talk about weight a lot. Obviously, they saw this transformation in us, but they know it's that mommy and daddy used to eat too much sugar and it made us really sick. And so now we don't. And so if they go to a birthday party and they have a piece of cake with their friends on somebody else's birthday, then they know, okay, we had some sugar. So let's take a break for a couple of days because we don't need cake and sugar and candy every day. They love now, they go trick or treating, they have a couple pieces of candy, and then they sell me the rest of their candy and I, donate it somewhere, but they love the fact that then they get $20 after trick or treating, and then they don't have to feel sick, and they're not just, they get all of the same fun experiences of their kids, but why do they need to have this kind of junk every day?
It's funny you say that, because I grew up addicted to sugar completely.
Yeah.
I mean, I had the sweet cereals in the morning, the Captain Crunch and the Fruit Loops and all that stuff, all of that. Loved pizza. I remember once, it's funny showing how weird I am. I've told this story before, but it's just a funny story. When I'm so addicted to soda, sweet drinks, love it. If you put a 2-liter of soda in my fridge, I'm drinking the whole thing.
Yeah.
I couldn't drink one. The whole thing's gone. So my wife knew that. This is years ago before I was on keto. And she's being good to me. She goes out shopping and she gets 2 liters of soda, trying to be good to me. I got mad at her. I said, why'd you get me 2 liters? She goes, what? So you have some. This is what I said. I literally said these words, how dumb this is. I'm embarrassed that I said it, but I said, now I got to drink both of them.
Right.
I actually said those words. How dumb is that? I said those words because in my mind, I didn't realize that's what an addict says.
Yeah.
And I was an addict. So I was like, now you gave me all that drug. Now I got to do all the drugs, right? So literally. And I think that was part of the reason I realized I had to stop.
Yeah,
right?
I'm the same way with something like peanut butter. I thought, oh, I have a spoonful of peanut butter. A spoonful of peanut butter is not that big of a deal. But the next thing you know, I'm like literally hiding in the pantry and I just ate the whole jar. Like it's a problem. And I think the other extreme, like I grew up on a farm in the middle of Indiana and I had vegetables that we grew and potatoes and we had deer that my dad killed. And like my mom made homemade bread and I was never allowed to have like cookies or soda. We got a box of sugar cereal on our birthday and that was like a really big thing. But then I went to college and moved across the street from a Taco Bell. I like gained 30 pounds my freshman year. So in some ways, like I want my kids to have though, like I don't want to go one extreme either. And I don't know what's the right thing to do. We're all just trying to raise our kids in the best way that we know how. And so other parents in this community, especially, try to do things differently than I do. But I hope that they can be like not like you and me, no offense, and be able to have a treat occasionally, but not let it cause them a 6-month bender.
Yes, I agree. Like people are wondering why I'm so fanatical. Like when I was running for office, I survived on protein and caffeine.
Right.
I didn't break. People said, why? Because I know who I am. I break once. Right. I'm 300 pounds. So I would like to not do that. So I don't. I'm actually very fanatical in my lifestyle. I don't even call it a diet. It's a lifestyle. Right. It's what I do.
That's the biggest thing. You can't just change the food that you're eating and expect the rest of your life to change. This is why we were able to lose weight for a short period of time, but you always gain it back is because your lifestyle didn't change. And everything has had to change. The way that I approach my day and my food and all of these things. And that seems very overwhelming for people. So much so the fact that so many people don't start because they're like, I can't change everything all at once. And you can't. You have to pick one little thing to change at a time. And then the next thing you know, a year goes by so fast. But if you're able to just make these really small changes that I promise you, they will add up over time. And my life now is almost unrecognizable from what it was 6 years ago. But if you had told me that 6 years ago, I would have given up before I got started because I wouldn't have felt like I could have made this radical of a change in my life.
Absolutely. And I'm going to talk to my audience again. Guys, if you like what you're hearing, click the like button. I know I bugged you, but please do it. It does matter. If you're watching on Twitter, please retweet this or repost it, re-exit, whatever is the thing you do now. I don't care. Just redo it, whatever that thing is. If you're watching on YouTube, of course, you can always click that like and subscribe. Damn you, subscribe. That also, and of course, you can always super chat me if you like. But regardless of what you choose to do or not, please do me a favor. Follow this woman who's sitting here giving us all this cool info, being so nice to us, showing us some love. Show her some love too. Follow her on YouTube if you would, right there at Laura Spath right there. If you want to do that, that'd be awesome. And of course, all of her information is in the show description on both YouTube and on Facebook. So I want to go to another piece of what you mentioned, which is, you know, you mentioned having cake or something like that. That's got to be emotional, right? I mean, we have that, right? If I'm going to a party, a birthday party, well, I got to have cake, right? Or if I did something awesome, well, we got to go out to dinner and have dessert, right? And it's not like I need it, but I feel like I have to, right? This is, Philip says this. He says, I did it for 2 years. Best I've ever felt or looked. It's a challenge socially. I'm hoping to get back on it soon. I think Phil is right. And how do you handle, you know, social stuff? Why aren't you having cake, Laura? You don't like my cake, right? How do you handle that?
I will say most of the time people don't notice, and you probably realize this eating out, most people aren't going to notice what you're eating as much as you think they are because they're kind of absorbed with themselves in that moment. So most of the time you can usually go by undetected, but you know, I have eaten enough cake just because it was a random Tuesday that I don't need it now. I try to find other ways to enjoy special things. And, you know, like now it's kind of known that this is what I do and it makes it easier. But you know, to celebrate special occasions, I have special treats that I give, special steaks that I'll buy, or we have Christmas coming up. We're going to do steaks and crab legs on Christmas. And that's a really fun treat for us. It was the first year that we didn't have our traditional Christmas cookies and all of those treats was really sad. And there's a grieving process, I think, that you have to go through for that. But now I look forward every year to the fact that we're going to have fancy steaks and crab legs and some fried cheese, like on Christmas Day. Like that's a really fun, special thing that you can create those new traditions. And going out publicly, like I'll just sometimes eat before I go. Usually if you're just like holding something and drinking and keep moving, nobody's really going to notice what's going on. But my biggest motivation for myself, or kind of trick that I use, is just to tell myself that that's going to be there later. It'll be there tomorrow. Like you don't need it for today. I still can't say I'll never eat those foods ever again, because that scarcity in me is like, wait, okay, I need to binge it now because I can never have this again the rest of my life. I'll better binge. So I constantly am telling myself, just later, it'll be there tomorrow. You can have it next Christmas. Like all of those specialty holiday treats you only see once a year, like they'll be there next year. And I kind of get myself through because it's that addict in me that knows I can't handle having it once. But I think most people nowadays, I don't usually go into like, I'm a carnivore and I only eat meat and vegetables or killing. Like I just kind of say like, oh no, thanks. I'm good. I'm full, or I'm doing low sugar. I don't eat, I try to not eat a lot of sugar. And I just really, most people are respectful of that. Or, I mean, you know what, it's your crazy Aunt Sue or your family members who made this cake. They're the ones who notice the most and push it the hardest on you. And usually that's just some type of projection from them emotionally because they're unhealthy and they can't moderate it. And they're feeling guilty that they're eating it. So then they want you to do it too. It's an emotional thing where all that comes from.
It's funny because what I found when I first did keto, I didn't want to, the same way you felt, I didn't want to feel like I can never have pizza again. Like I just couldn't imagine that I could never have pizza again. So what I did was what I thought was going to work for me, which actually did, which is I would be grossly specific on when I was going to break my diet, right? Like I'm going to eat what I want from noon on Thanksgiving until 11:59, a.m. the day after, like whatever. I'd literally be that fanatic. Like I would just sit and wait. It's not noon yet. I can't have it yet. Like just literally can't have it. It's noon. Eat what I want. The first time I did that, I binged. I was like, I need all of the food. Like give me everything. But by the second or third time that I did it, I didn't have to anymore because I knew that if I wanted to, I could.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that, and now it's funny. Now it's been 13 years. Literally, my taste buds have changed.
Right.
So things that I used to think were good now to me are too sweet or too much.
It tastes like plastic. Some of those processed foods you used to eat before, and now they just taste like plastic.
100%. It has really changed my taste buds. Like I used to love sweet breakfast cereals with milk. I used to love that stuff.
Yeah.
Now you'd have to pay me to eat it now. Like you'd have to give me money to eat it now. And I used to love it. My taste was actually changed. And now even during Christmas, Thanksgiving, I don't rush. My daughter for the first time wanted to have a keto Thanksgiving. And we did. And I'd never had one before, but I didn't care. I didn't miss it. But again, I know that if I wanted to, I could, right? But I don't want to anymore. I think after time, there has been a change in my own taste buds. I think that's absolutely true. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I just know too, like I want to be healthier and I want to feel good. And eventually you have to find a way to have that be a bigger priority. Like I'm trying to figure out what am I looking forward to at Christmas, and all the things that are exciting for me that are non-food related, the time that I'm spending with my family and my kids and all of our little fun non-food traditions, rather than focusing on all of the things that I'm missing out on. And it's really an entire mindset shift, but it's something that you can change by intentionally practicing it.
Well, it's something else I realized, being keto for so long, when I do a carb overload, I feel like garbage.
Yeah.
Like I feel like someone punched me in the stomach and like someone's on top of me going, don't move. Like I feel terrible afterwards. So in my mind, I'm like, do I like that food enough? Like, is it really like, it's really got to be something I really like for me to break on this. It can't just be, oh, there's bread. Nope. It's got to be like the best of the thing that I can't get every week. Then maybe. So I think even that has changed how I think about it. So I want to grab what Dee says. Dee says there's a few food documentaries that every American should watch. So you see what government food, the government does to our food. Food Inc., Forks Over Knives, Fed Up, and Fast Food Nation. Do you know any of these?
So I actually went vegan for a year after watching Forks Over Knives. And by the end of that year, I had lost 50 pounds, but my hair was falling out, my hormones were tanking, and I was extremely unhealthy. And I was eating 6 times a day, spending all of my days off meal prepping. It was so expensive. It was so much work, and my health rapidly declined. But I thought, I watched this movie and they said, this is what you should do. So it's just wild how we see, 80% of vegans go back to eating meat because
Yes.
sustain that.
Yes.
Because your body is not getting enough nutrients. And
the funny thing is, they always say carnivore is unsustainable, but in reality, veganism is.
And you know what? If you pick one food on the whole planet, that if somebody ate this one food in its entirety for the rest of their lives where they wouldn't die, and beef is the only one of those foods that you could eat forever.
Wouldn't it be organ meat?
That's definitely debatable in this community. I think there's some benefits from organ meat, but there's also other toxins that can build up into it. And so I think just your standard red meat is, if you were to eat only beef liver, you would end up getting overloaded with some of the toxins that are in there.
Oh, got it.
Small amount is fine, but a large amount is too much. So just a regular standard old steak, you could live on that forever. But vegans have to supplement. And if somebody wants to eat vegan, I don't care what you do, right? But they have to supplement things very specifically.
100%.
And on a carnivore diet, most people are not supplementing anything. I think if you want to eat some plants, you can do whatever you want, but you don't need to eat them for a nutritional basis or for your health.
So Joel brings up an important point. He says, I was told if I go on a keto diet, I could eat all the bacon I want. That was a lie, because I can't afford all the bacon that I want. Now, he's joking, but he's not.
Right.
Keto and carnivore, this can be expensive in theory, right? I mean, isn't this an issue of expense or no?
It is if you're comparing spaghetti to steak. Sure, a steak is way more expensive than a spaghetti. But think about, you naturally don't eat as often in the day. I used to spend more money on Ben & Jerry's than I now spend on steak. We're not eating the side dishes. We're not eating desserts. We're not drinking the sodas. You are not consuming all of the other things. If I look at week over week, especially with my husband and I, both 300 pounds and both eating so much snacks and processed food and desserts and just side dishes, we were spending way more money before on food than we are now. And we eat predominantly steaks and some chicken and pork and other things. Like, you can make this way of eating very sustainable. If you think about eating only steaks, it's very expensive, but we do steaks and chicken, pork, ground beef, eggs. Those are all things that can really balance out the budget. And it's, for most people, after they've been doing it for a few weeks or a couple of months, they realize how much money they're saving by not throwing away the vegetables that go rotten in their fridge constantly, and all of the side dishes and desserts and other things. Like, we eat out way less also, and eating out is so
that I
expensive.
noticed tremendously. You bring that up. I hardly ever eat out anymore.
Right.
You're totally correct. I make almost all my own food.
Yep.
I cook twice a day. And I only eat 2 meals a day. I don't eat 3 meals a day anymore. I used to eat 3 meals a day. Now I'm not hungry. So I only eat 2 meals a day.
I used to stop at the gas station on my way to the office every morning and first of all, I go to Chick-fil-A and get breakfast. Then I would go to the gas station, get about $20 worth of snacks from the gas station. So I was eating 3 meals a day plus desserts, plus all of those snacks throughout the day. And then usually I'd be heading, getting a milkshake on my drive home. Like, it was insane. And I think it sounds like an excess, but it's not that far off from what a lot of people are doing. And you really are saving a lot of money by cutting out all of that extra stuff and being more satisfied nutritionally.
Absolutely. Act Like Barbara says, loving the carnivore / keto and libertarian crossover. These two worlds have more in common than most realize. And they do, for a very important reason. The keto world, the carnivore world, is actually about food freedom. It's about people choosing health freedom, doing what we want, not necessarily conforming to what everyone says, not conforming to the government's garbage pyramid lie scheme, that thing, not conforming to big pharma, big agriculture, not conforming to any of it. I think, Act Like Barbara, you're exactly correct. I think that's a crossover. And I think you feel that too, don't you, Laura?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I don't have to eat what the government puts into standard of the food pyramid or the My Plate or whatever it is right now. But the people that do have to abide by those rules are children in schools, the seniors in the elderly care centers, people in hospitals, the people who are the most vulnerable in our society are forced to eat that way by the government, and it's making them sicker and fatter. My husband was in the hospital for complications from his diabetes, and his diabetic menu was peanut butter and jelly, chicken fingers, and pizza. And he lived on that for months. And then they would give him insulin shots every day in the afternoon.
Of course.
And they were giving him more medications. And those are the things that were killing him. And yet he was forced to do that. I mean, my kids are homeschooled for many reasons that I'm sure the libertarians in this community would understand. But one of the top 10 has to be the fact that, like, I don't want them there, not only getting the nutritional information in schools, but also eating what's there. You know, before we started homeschooling, my daughter had gone to public kindergarten, and we would feed her bacon and eggs at home for breakfast. She would go to school, and without our knowledge, they were giving her donuts and muffins and bagels every morning. And my little kindergartner started putting on weight, and we couldn't figure out where it was coming from. And she was having, just stressed, and she was tired and lethargic. And my wonderfully energetic kindergartner was suddenly showing signs of like insulin resistance. And we were like, what's going on? So there's obviously a lot of reasons, but we thankfully very quickly realized what was going on and were able to get her home. And now they're fully homeschooled. But the way that they feed our children and the elders in this society is really unfortunate.
Sorry, absolutely correct. Dee wants to bring up, I would like to know her thought on all the antibiotics that get injected at these factory farms. Do you have any view on it? The problem obviously with going carnivore is you also have to pick and select what meat you're going to eat, right? And many of these meats you're going to eat are going to come from factory farms unless you search and look and whatever. Right. How do you handle that? And what do you think about this?
I am definitely not a purist in the carnivore community because I'm a normal person. I work a normal job. I shop at the regular grocery store. We go to Costco. So there are a lot of purists who would disagree with me, but I think that, if I've spoken with a lot of ranchers and talked about this topic with them, they're not just going around injecting. Hormones are expensive. Antibiotics are expensive in cattle. They're not utilizing those things just proactively for no reason. They're using it for a necessary reason, but also those things are out of the animal's system by the time they're harvested, by the time that it's at your door. So I think there's things that we can worry about. And there's also things that you can worry about that if you get there. The first thing you got to do is cut out the Oreos and the Doritos and get down to eating meat. And for me, the meat that I can afford, I get regular eggs from the grocery store. I get regular meat from Costco. And that's just really what I can focus on. I think if you enjoy grass-finished, organic, farm-raised meat and you want to source from your local farmer, I think that's fantastic to do that. It's a very libertarian thing to do, to shop locally and do those things. I just think sometimes we put that as a barrier of entry to get started on this way of eating, and it gets so overwhelming, and that's much more expensive, as we were talking about, that it prohibits people from starting in the first place. And I think to put a hard rule that that's the way it has to be ends up being more of a barrier to entry for people.
I'm glad you said that, because when I first started doing keto, I didn't care where anything came from. I would just want to lose weight. I wanted to be healthier. I just did it. Right now, though, as I've been so long, I've become more of a snob. When I'm out, I don't care. I eat whatever I eat, whatever. I don't know what the diner has or the restaurant has, if it's grass fed, whatever it is. But when I eat at home, almost always I try to get pasture raised eggs and grass fed beef. But it does become expensive. But in my view, if I'm going to drop a couple bucks, I'll buy a couple less shirts and wear the same damn t-shirt and buy some better steak or buy some better eggs. That's just my 2 cents on it. But I get what you're saying. I wasn't that way until later on in my journey, if that makes any sense, right?
Right. Yeah, you have to get there when you're ready. And there's a nutritional difference, but for me, it's small enough that I think that you're making 90% of the improvement just by going meat and cutting out the junk in the first place, and then worry about optimizing and all those other little things as you are available to you.
There we go. We have a super chat. Justin, thank you for the $4.99. He says, I have been wanting to try this.
Yeah.
Because I was diagnosed with, I hope I get it right, ulcerative. I hope I got that right. Ulcerative colitis. Yeah. Any idea if this would work? Thank you. Do you have any idea on this?
Yes, Justin, I've heard dozens and dozens and dozens of stories of people healing, completely reversing ulcerative colitis by going carnivore. A lot of the plants and things that are causing inflammatory issues. This would be a person that I would suggest doesn't do spices and doesn't eat processed deli meats and things. You're going to want to try to be as clean as possible. I also think you should try to look up things there's something called chronic inflammatory response syndrome, CIRS. And if you just put that, actually, Michaela Peterson did an episode with Judy Cho, and they really talked a lot about SIRS. Anybody that I know that has had ulcerative colitis has been diagnosed with SIRS. And that is not to go down a rabbit hole, but quickly, that's a condition that prevents your body from being able to eliminate toxins. It's a genetic condition. So I might be exposed to mold and it would have no issues on me because I don't have that genetic condition. But we all have this bucket of toxins in our body that we can kind of clean out on our own. People with SIRS can't do that. And it really shows up in autoimmune conditions, specifically ulcerative colitis. So really, carnivore is a great fix, but usually it's not going to fix it long term. You got to look into something like SIRS and see if you can find out more information about that. But look up Judy, Michaela, SIRS.
There we go, Justin. I hope that was helpful. I think it's pronounced Haley. Haley Johnson says, I'm down 30 pounds since June. 15 of that has been since starting carnivore November 2nd. And she says the other 15 was keto. So she kind of went keto like you. She went keto, then carnivore.
And you know what? Keto is a great place to start for a lot of people. And it was for me because you can eat more stuff and you have a little more excuses of things. But I think over time, a lot of us find we have to cut out a lot of especially now, when you started keto 13 years ago, you couldn't walk down the aisles in the grocery store and every other package was labeled keto friendly when we both know that it's not. And
Correct.
So we got started earlier. I had to deal with like Quest bars and low carb tortillas, but that was kind of it that was around for me 6 years ago. But over time, I had to cut those out in order to lose weight. And then I felt so much better. And I'll tell you with expenses, buying those replacement foods and the keto-fied versions of foods, that's what gets expensive. It's not buying a carton of eggs. It's buying your keto ice cream.
Have you ever eaten egg wraps?
Yes. Yes.
They're delicious. Yeah. But they're like $1.50 each.
Yeah.
Like
but you can make your own. Larry, you're probably too busy and too cool for it, but you could make your own very easily, or like take a protein powder and some eggs and you can make your own crepe like I do that sometimes where I'll make like a taco, but you can make it out of like a protein powder pancake.
God, maybe I should do that because
my kids
those
love
are expensive. Yeah. They're like $1.50 for one wrap.
Yeah, the cheese wraps too.
Yes, yes. All right, so you're right. So I might stop thinking maybe I should do that. So yes, David says you're actually eating less because you're eating more filling foods. Ooh, maybe what I see in that in myself is I am far less hungry now that I'm keto than I was before. I was hungry often. Like I wake up in the morning, I don't feel a need to eat until hours later, right? I mean, I'm not as hungry. And one thing I also started doing, this was years ago, when I first started doing this, when I couldn't find keto, right? Because again, I did this 13 years ago. It wasn't very easy to find. Right. I would go, I guess I'll just eat regular now. And I would just break and just do it.
Yeah.
At one point I said, I'm just not going to eat. And what I found is I was eating because it was the time to eat,
right?
Not because I was actually hungry. So once I decided to not eat, I realized, oh, I'm not really hungry. I was eating because it's the time to eat. And once that happened, it broke a mindset in me. It changed. I mean, that's had happened too. Like you eat because you're supposed to, right?
Right. Absolutely. And your body might get a little bit of hunger signals around that normal lunchtime because it's used to eating then. You drink some water and you go for a little walk and you wait 20 minutes and it goes away and you're like, oh, I wasn't hungry. It's just that my body was expecting, it's like a dog salivating, right? My body was expecting food in that moment. But that's a good point. And, he doesn't he's not wrong by saying, yeah, it is about calories. And I hate talking about calories because calories matter, but also there's a There's a very big difference between the calories in a donut and the calories in a steak. And I can eat 100 calories of something, two different foods, and the satiety difference. That's the part that we don't realize. Like, yeah, you can lose weight just by cutting calories, but you're going to be miserable because you're not going to be satisfied. And so that's where I think the longevity element comes in with keto and carnivore is you're really not emotionally and physically hungry all the time. And that helps a lot of people.
All righty. I want to go another comment. This is Kelly. She says, this is so timely. I just started carnivore 2 weeks ago for both weight loss and autoimmune disorders.
Yeah.
Is autoimmune another big deal, right?
Yeah. And that's where sometimes those plants can cause flare-ups for people. Anybody who's dealing with autoimmune conditions can see improvement by cutting those things out and treating, whether or not you're carnivore for the rest of your life, you at least can treat it like an elimination diet to say, which of these foods am I eating you go carnivore for 90 days and you add those nuts back in, I guarantee you'll have some type of negative reaction because nuts are really so inflammatory. But maybe broccoli's not causing you an issue, but maybe onions are. Like, you can add foods back in really slowly and find out like which are the ones that are
sweet
causing
onions
issues.
now, taking away all my cool foods.
I know.
So please, I want to get back to a bunch more comments, but before I do that, Laura, tell me, what are you doing? If you guys want to follow Laura again, you can follow her over at her YouTube if you want to, over at Laura Spath. You can do that YouTube. Other things that are at the are also on the Facebook page and also on the YouTube page. But tell us, what do you want us to do? How can we follow what you're doing?
Yeah, YouTube is the biggest one. We try to document just like everyday life of what our family is eating and how we are living this way and the balance. I travel a lot for my corporate job. And so I do show a lot of like examples of eating out because I think that's really hard for people sometimes to think about. But that's a big part of it. And then on Instagram, I kind of just like take you along with our daily life and show you a lot of things. But this is really just, if anything, this is a selfish thing for me to share on YouTube and Instagram because it holds me accountable. It makes me like, be honest with myself and keeps me on track for all of these years because I hopefully am showing people that it's possible and you can stay healthy and do this long term. And so I want to share that example with people, but it really just keeps me on track. But
you showed something, and I want to bring this up. You showed something kind of important. You went through a tummy tuck.
Yes.
After this, you had lost so much weight.
Yeah.
That you literally had to get skin removed. And so did your husband. Talk about that for a second, please.
Yeah, it's, there are people who will say we lost the weight wrong, we did it too fast, like something happens that we ended up with loose skin. And it does, thankfully, I know they're wrong, but I think that a lot of the loose skin element depends on like where you carried your weight before, how old you are when you started, and there's so just genetics in general of like what type of skin elasticity are you going to have? I had excess skin, so I had like 3 pounds of skin removed, and after I had maintained my weight loss for a long time. And that was about a year ago. And maybe I think there's an element like fasting and autophagy that I mentioned before can help reduce loose skin over time. I had fasted a tremendous amount. I've done a 7-day fast at some point before, and it really wasn't going to, unless I wanted to continuously extreme fast for the next 10 years, my loose skin to that extent was not going away. And that's one of those elements where like I could have fasted longer and harder in hopes that my skin went away, with the detriment of the rest of my health, right? That over fasting, maybe the skin would have benefited, but it would have affected my hair and my hormones. And I would have also cannibalized some muscle tissue at the same time, which I didn't want to do. And so I went the surgery route a year ago. It was the best decision I ever made. And then my husband actually had his skin removal surgery 2 weeks ago. So we're still in the deeps of his recovery right now, but he's already really thrilled. And he's like, I'm 38, he's 48. And it's been a really awesome experience for us.
Wow, look at that. So that so you're saying while it's tough, it was still a good idea.
Yeah, and I mean, life-changing, best money I've ever spent in my life. It's insanely expensive, and unfortunately, the way our insurance works in America, it doesn't cover those types of things. Like they'll pay for everything that you need in order to get sick and fat and obese and unhealthy and to stay that way. But if you get healthier, and then you need something medical procedure to reverse that previous damage, they won't pay for that. So we paid for both of those surgeries, but yeah, absolutely best thing I ever could have done. And I have no even second thought that I did anything wrong along the way to cause it. I just know I did everything right. And even the surgeons, both of us talked about how he could tell just by looking at my skin alone that I didn't have a weight loss surgery in order to lose the weight, because the health and elasticity and the viability of my skin, the strength of my muscles showed that I was not nutritionally deprived in order to lose the weight. And he, it was very different than a lot of the people that he does the surgery on. He could tell.
Very nice. Scientific Libertarian says there's pros and cons to every agricultural product. Agriculture is way more nuanced than sound bites like meat bad.
Right.
I think that's true. I mean, it's a big entire mix of all types of things, right? They grow this to grow that, to feed this, to feed that. I think they do all that kind of stuff, right? It's definitely a mix. D says, yep, cholesterol, the biggest BS lies are told by our doctors. Agreed, 100%. It's 100% agreed. I know that they've been trying to get me on some kind of drug for literally just, I don't know how long. So long. And it's never been an issue at all. Yet people who have good cholesterol still have heart attacks.
Yeah. And women, especially, I think it's just, I know cholesterol in general is a big lie, but women especially need cholesterol in order to have healthy hormones. Our hormones function properly based on fat. And it's also, I truly believe this low cholesterol movement and so many women eating margarine and salads and oil-based dressings is why we have such a problem with menopause and Hashimoto's and thyroid issues in our society. And that women's hormones, and they need exogenous hormones as we age and go through menopause. My mom, just as a side note, is 66 and she's been carnivore now, and she reversed her diabetes completely. She was off all of her shots and her medication. She has Hashimoto's and has really stabilized it and normalized it, like, and
Wow,
in her
that's great.
60s. And somebody who's spent a lifetime dealing with this as well, and she's carnivore and has never been healthier in her 60s.
Yeah, Melissa says it also reversed my type 2 diabetes and got off all my diabetes meds. So
Yeah,
there
awesome.
we go. Yes.
Fantastic.
Dave asks, Larry, if you don't mind me asking, is your wife on a Mediterranean diet? Similar. My wife is Greek, so she is on a similar, but not really. She's on she eats what she likes, kind of Mediterranean-ish diet. So that's kind of what she is. That's more like it. Dee asked a question, do you take supplements for vitamins you may not get? Do you supplement?
I don't, mainly because there aren't any vitamins that you can't get from meat. As long as you're eating, I think, a variety of meats, there's not anything nutritionally that I'm missing. There are some people, if you are extremely sick to begin with, there are a lot of supplements that can be helpful in the beginning to help heal you from what you have come back from. So my husband took some supplements originally because he was so insulin resistant for so long. But long term, you shouldn't need to take supplements if you're eating a well-rounded carnivore diet. There's nothing nutritionally that I'm missing the way that like a vegan would be missing something completely from their diet. But supplements can be helpful for healing the sicker you are. And also, I'll say this too, like my kids eat different than I do, also because they're not trying to reverse a lifetime of metabolic damage to their systems. Right. There's a very big difference in how you have to eat to prevent disease and to reverse disease that's already happened. And so my goal with my kids is to prevent that disease, when for myself, I have to be a lot more strict because I'm reversing a disease that I already had.
Yeah, I take, I usually, depends on how I feel, but whenever I feel like I'm healing, I always take extra magnesium.
Yeah.
Do that often.
I use electrolytes. To me, I guess that's maybe a supplement as well. I take electrolytes with magnesium, sodium, potassium. The sodium really, again, salt is not bad. And that's another big piece that
I have lots of salt.
Misguided. Yeah. We need that salt when you're not eating carbs. You need that salt to keep you hydrated. So that's a big part of drinking electrolytes every day.
Yes. So I take magnesium as a supplement, and often usually a multivitamin too on top of, just in case. So I take a multivitamin, magnesium. I sometimes add other things, depends how I feel.
Right.
Like I have stuff up there, like I'll take that, but I'm not crazy. Depends on what I think,
like. Unfortunately, based on blood work, a lot of times people are like, oh, I'm vitamin D deficient, I should take vitamin D. I'm vitamin this deficient, I should take this vitamin. It doesn't work like that. Why was your vitamin D low in the first place? What are you not absorbing? What are you not getting in the first place? There's something going on if you're deficient in a certain area, and just taking a supplement is not a fix. You're playing this game of whack-a-mole where then you're causing another issue or something else to happen. We have to get to the root cause of what caused that to be out of balance in the first place, not just take a supplement or a pill to fix it. It just doesn't work that way. And I think that with the entire medical industry, we miss the point of getting to the root cause. Like Justin earlier with his ulcerative colitis, you can address ulcerative colitis, but you got to get to the root cause of why is that happening in the first place, not just fix the symptom.
Right. Juan for Freedom says, I did the carnivore diet, tried it a few years ago with some mild success, and I do recommend it. These high protein diets get so much bad press because they hurt the processed food cartel.
Yeah, love that.
It's what you were talking about, right? It's a money issue at one point, right?
Definitely.
I think it is. John says, Larry, is Laura a New Yorker? Thoughts on salt and liver consumption? Lots of love, Larry. Thank you for this topic. Well, I will cover the salt part. You and I discussed it. Yeah. Salt is good. We need it. You have discussed also the liver idea that organ meat is good, but too much of it is no good.
Right.
So how about you? Are you a New Yorker?
No, I'm not. I grew up in the Midwest, born in West Virginia and raised in Indiana, and I live in Phoenix, Arizona right now. So nice opposite. You could keep your cold. I will stay in the heat all year round.
I live in the belly of the beast. I live in New York City. I live in Queens. So I'm in the belly of the beast. So
it was 80 degrees Ryan here today. I'm good.
No, we're at like 40. So yes. Scott says, carnivore has been great for me. Oh, I like that.
Awesome, Scott.
That's great. Teresa says, I make a great carnivore pizza. It's Italian sausage as the crust, and homemade Alfredo sauce. Well, there we
That
go.
sounds delicious.
She goes
You
on
can
and
still
says,
have
I've been
pizza.
carnivore for 11 months now and never felt better. So yes, she has pizza, but let me walk to that piece. Is this the idea of kind of filling in foods that you were talking about? Is this is this the equivalent of going to the store and buying the keto snack? Or no?
I think for some people, replacement foods are a great thing in the beginning because you still feel like you're getting to have that and it satisfies a craving. But I think somebody like myself, a replacement food typically just triggers me to want to eat the real thing. There's carnivores who make carnivore ice cream and carnivore pizza and carnivore breads. I personally have to stay away from all of that just because it's not as good as what I remember. Again, I think if I had a real ice cream, it wouldn't taste the same, but it's not as good as what my memory of those foods is. And it just makes me miss those foods. But I do protein powder pancakes for my kids. And I think that's a great replacement where they get to have pancakes, but they're not having to eat actual flour and junk and seed oils and all those things. So it kind of depends on you. For a lot of people, those replacements are a really good bridge to help you with a sustainable lifestyle. But is it triggering you to overeat them and to want more things? You have to be aware of that.
Justin, by the way, says thank you.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Justin.
So there we go. I guess he stayed to listen. So that was good. I love that. So that's good. So I've kept you so long. I want to say thank you for the time I kept you. Is there anything else you want to bring up before we wrap this up?
No, I think people need to hopefully find ways to swap out some of the junk in their diet and make a better meat choice. And then, think about ways that you can make those little swaps and over time realize how good you feel. And that's all I hope. You can come find me on YouTube for some examples. But for the most part, I hope this was informative and helpful.
There we go. Yes, you can check her out, as I said, at YouTube at Laura Spath if you want to. Please click that like button if you like what you saw. Yeah. If you're watching on Twitter or X, please re-exit, whatever the case may be. I appreciate you all. And I will be back somehow tomorrow. Not sure what yet. I'm just going to yell about something probably. I'll be yelling about something tomorrow, I'm sure.